retain Reckless on the team. So I don't know, it might just be up to him which direction he wants to go.
Well, we'll definitely have to take a look because we are into Champion Select, ladies and gentlemen. This is the first Challenger event, and Kazakh's banned.
They banned it anyways. They don't care if it's changed in the patch. It was such a huge part of the games in Tenerife. They don't want to leave that one up. Another thing though, the Evelyn was huge for Copenhagen Wolves. They picked it every single time. The jungle Evelyn is something that they use to get Reckless going in his lane because she can gank that bottom lane. A lot of junglers avoid the bottom lane because of the ward coverage that support will automatically bring to that lane. But Evelyn makes you bring pink wards, and it's easier to keep track of where those are and get around them and pressure the bottom lane with a jungler as sneaky as her.
So depending on what TCM lock in now, in terms of that duo lane, in terms of that bottom lane that we know is so important for Copenhagen Wolves, Reckless tends to trend towards Ezreal's and Caitlyn's as his sort of go-to champions for the time being. We know he plays a phenomenal Vayne, but it's a risky pick when you're well aware your opponents are going to be doing everything they can to get to you. And a Lissandra pick, the Claw of Doom gets thrown out and they try to catch a Reckless.
They've showed some of the strongest engage that there is in the game already, so he's definitely going to have to be worried. And Lissandra, when she rushes that Hourglass, doesn't have to use her ult defensively. She'll love to get in there, use it on the AD carry, and then also use the Ring of Frost to lock down everyone. So that's a really good setup for the Zyra pop-up. And just add, double crowd control.
So this is also something that worked particularly well for a lot of the wildcard teams, was getting these very heavy crowd control oriented sort of team comps that have a lot of AoE CC and a lot of ability to lock you up for prolonged periods of time. In addition, TCM haven't actually revealed their hand. We don't know if that's top lane, we don't know if that's mid lane, as far as Lissandra's concerned.
And speaking of revealing their hands, the reason that they first picked Zyra was because Copenhagen Wolves, also in Tenerife, use mid lane Zyra multiple times. So that's a two for one there with that pick. They're able to take it away from Kautard, and it's a great CC stacker for Lissandra.
So it's also, it's sort of something that's sort of signature to Kautard. And in terms of some of the other signature champions, Naruto Rador is very well known in the high elo solo queue for his Shyvana and his Nocturne. Those are his two champions. Mithy said to me that if there's a lot of crowd control from TCM, they may give Naruto Rador the Shyvana because he's so confident and comfortable, even though there's no utility around that particular champion.
Speaking of mid laners that bring utility, if that's a mid lane Zyra and a solo lane Lissandra, those are two of the most CC heavy mid laners. So it looks like they are following that plan.
Well, we'll have to see where that either support or solo laner ends up, because right now the pressure is on the Copenhagen Wolves. They need to reveal their top laner as well as their AD carry.
And TCM, their solo laners are bringing extra crowd control. Even their AD carry, one of the most heavy, CC heavy AD carries there are there. So they're opening the gates here for the jungle Shyvana, which we have not seen the likes of since the St. Vicious days.
We'll have
to be hoping that Naruto Rador has better control of his Shyvana ultimates, because we've seen a few end up in the wall.
To be fair, when I think of Shyvana days, it's got to be Diamond Procs.
That's
Kiev
true,
last year. I think at Gamescom we can talk about
we'll give
Diamond Procs.
The credit to Diamond there, the EU side.
We do see that Reckless has decided to lock in that Vayne, and against the crazy amounts of crowd control their opponents, he's currently sitting on barrier.
I was gonna say,
I think it might be smart to go cleanse.
He'll either get cleanse or he'll get a Quicksilver Sash as soon as possible, because there's just so much lockdown on this TCM team right now. He's going to need that to avoid it, because they're not going to be diving anyone else. Kassadin has a built-in escape, and he's very, very hard to pin down. So they're going to be looking at Reckless.
From what we can see between the two teams right now, it's pretty clear that Copenhagen Wolves have got a very good skirmish team. They got pretty good duelist mobility, and they'll probably excel in those smaller 2v2, 3v3s. But the TCM team, if they stack up as a 5-man, that is a terrifying death ball that's just going to roll over everything.
So the Dragon's going to be the beacon that TCM want to use. They're going to try and pull Copenhagen Wolves into a bad spot. However, their team, it's great for skirmishes. It's also great for flanking around the outside and poking at TCM while they're inside that Dragon pit. So we'll have to see. It's going to come down to the control that they have over their characters and if they're able to stay out of the CC that TCM are bringing to the table.
So in terms of the final pick, JWoww has decided to go with Nasus. It's a champion that we don't traditionally associate with him because he does so phenomenally well in those assassins. We've seen him play Zed, Kha'Zix, Diana, as spring to mind as the keys. Do you feel that that is an anti-Vayne pick?
I mean, you're going to be able to add the Wither, so it's another thing that she'll want to either QSS or cleanse if he changes it at the last second here. So they're really just looking to stack another CC. It's not a hard CC, but it's a very effective crowd control for an AD carry.
Well, we'll have to see how well TCM can control the damage sources that the Copenhagen Wolves are going to be putting down. This is, of course, a semi-final match. Now, TCM, they've got that spot. They're going to be in the Spring Promotion Tournament. This is for bragging rights. We heard them in the video, and they're like, these are our old enemies. This is our old nemesis. And we'll see if they can keep them in the past or if the Wolves are going to bite back from today.
And this is also a best of 3, keep in mind. So there's also some more mind games that go into best of 3s rather than the best of 1 that all the LCS teams are used to. This is just the first lineup that they're showing. They are always thinking about the second game, and then third game is usually more reactionary to what happened in the first game.
Ironically, between these two teams, because they're in the Challenger circuit and because they've taken place in so many of these offline events, they've played more best of 3s against each other than I think many of the LCS teams are. So I think they'll be quite accustomed to it, and we'll see how well they've prepared. There's one matchup that I am interested in. YoungBuck has got his Renekton, and I think that is arguably his most famous champion.
That's definitely a classic champion you just associate with the name YoungBuck.
And he's going up against a Nasus. If TCM can get a head-to-head matchup, that's not a regular matchup that we see basically in any scene.
It definitely has the kill potential there for YoungBuck, though. And he's confident in, like I said, all of the 1 versus 1 top lane matchups. It's the 1 versus 2 situations that he usually has a bit more trouble with. So we'll have to see if they're able to pull off that combo. And the classic rivalry here, if you follow the League of Legends lore, between the brothers, Renekton and Nasus.
Well, we'll have to see in which direction it goes. As it stands, it does look like TCM are considering some lane shenanigans, as they got a bit of a party in the mid lane, but nobody has really settled into their home. Reckless is also maintaining a defensive posture near the top half of the map, so we may see the Copenhagen Wolves going for a lane swap. We'll have to see, as we're only 1 minute into this matchup.
Now, it's interesting also that TCM have brought the teleport on Lissandra because their jungler does not have a lot of ganking potential, because there's no CC on Shyvana, and she didn't bring exhaust either. They're actually going to bring that threat with the mid teleporting in. So top lane, he really doesn't have to worry about Shyvana coming or even the Nasus that's already in his lane. It's only going to be him watching out for the teleports.
Well, we'll have to see how effectively the Belgian Beast can make that teleport work for him. Both teams moving around this mid area. They both warded one another's red buffs respectively. Copenhagen Wolves slightly more efficiently, as they've managed to land it in the grass as opposed to underneath the spawning point. But a very tentative start for both of these teams. No one really even grouping and invading. It was playing safe.
Well, Copenhagen Wolves do make the switch up, and they are going to invade on this red here. A little late invade. Nasus was able to see them coming in through that tri-bush, but he wasn't able to do anything about it because it was 3 members.
Well, a very nice counterplay here from Copenhagen Wolves. You tend to see these junglers sort of trading buffs at the LCS where they'll stick to one half of the map. But as it stands, YoungBuck with the aid of Kautard are going to be able to secure the bottom or their red buff and deny that from Naruto, who actually hasn't even considered going for an invade.
And I like this move because the 2 versus 1 situation that he usually has trouble with, it's those first few seconds up there that get you into trouble, where you take a lot of harass trying to get a couple minions. So he's just avoided that entirely, grabs up the money and the experience from the red buff instead. Meanwhile, we had Shook actually leave one of the small lizards at that red camp for Naruto. So his next red spawn is going to be a little bit delayed, but there's an increased experience on those small lizards. So Shook's a little bit behind.
Well, we'll see how well that pans out for him these next couple of minutes. The fact that he's got double buffs and is posturing towards the bottom half of the map he may be considering picking a fight here with Matroko and Barney. No love for the big purple dinosaur in this game. And for the time being, it does look like it's going to be that sort of 2v2 defense. As you can see, Naruto is mimicking the posture towards the top lane. 3.10, definitely seeing more of those 2v2 sort of jungler babysits than we are of the pressure.
Yeah, so the whole point of Copenhagen Wolves with this 2v1 switch is to deny Nasus the Q stacks. A solo lane Nasus likes to max that Q so that he can get the damage in the end game, as opposed to the jungle Nasus that likes to max Spirit Fire just for wave clear and jungle clear. In this situation, by switching up the 2v1, they're sort of changing JWoww's focus, and he's going to have to put more points into that Spirit Fire just to keep the tower alive.
Well, we'll have to keep tabs on JWoww's siphoning strike stacks. We've seen some of them getting as high as 250 odd in some of the EU LCS matches. We'll have to see whether or not he can get to that same position, because Vayne, even though Reckless has decided to go with Barrier, a Nasus with a heavily farmed Q can basically two-shot most Vaynes once we get to that very late game. We do see down in the bottom lane, there's a lot of fighting going down as Young Bucks, with the aid of Shook, is able to pick up first blood on Barney D. Basically just comboing the stun and the knockup.
Oh yeah, double red buffs there from a very scary duo lane of Jarvan and Renekton. Extremely hard to get away from, even in the crowd control heavy duo lane that is Varus and Zyra.
And you can see that Barney actually expended his flash trying to get away as well. So unfortunately for him, Summoner Spell blown, as well as giving up that first blood, and it went to the solo laner as well. So Young Buck not only has a CS advantage, he's got that nice gold spike that comes with a juicy Zyra kill.
Yeah, it's a great start for him, and he hasn't even had to use his health potion. That Doran shield really doing a lot of work in the 2v1s, because all the damage does come from auto attacks very early.
He's jumping onto Matroko, and that was a lot of damage without really any reply.
And able to get out and dodge those Zyra roots with the dice there. So very good use of Renekton. We said it's his champion. That's one he's got the most time on, and he's really showing it.
And we do see that Reckless at the moment. He's actually maxing his silver bolts. Young Buck looking just to interrupt Matroko, as we call. Slices in, dices out. It's basically just being a pest. And, you know, it's never a good situation to be in if your duo lane is being bullied by your opponent's solo laner.
Yes, a single player bowling two laners doesn't add up for TCM. And Nasus is having no such success up in that top lane. Yes, he's still maxing his siphoning strike, but he's not getting the chance to use it and get those last hits up. Already down 20 CS to Renekton.
Well, we've got a couple of seconds to take a look at this mid lane, and we notice that they're approaching level 6. So Kaltard is going to start to get into a position where he can really annoy and pester Belgian Beast Lissandra, even with the mobility of that Glacial Path, or the Claw of Doom as we call it here. It's going to be difficult to deal with.
And yeah, this is another CS lead that should not be happening. Kassadin coming out ahead in CS in the early phase before he hits level 6 has got to make TCM very, very worried for that endgame.
Yeah, Belgian Beast not taking full advantage of all the range he has to offer. For the time being, outside of a little bit of jungle presence being shown by Shook v2. Naruto Rador, you know, you talked about how Shyvana doesn't offer ganking potential. Naruto Rador is just farming, but he does have double the CS of Shook. So I guess kind of win.
So he's been hard farming, but Shook was able to pull off that flash gank down bottom to grab the first blood, which has brought about this situation where the Renekton is going to be a factor much earlier than the Nasus is. So it's definitely an interesting trade-off, but one that has so far gone in the favor of Copenhagen Wolves.
Now that Naruto Rador is getting closer to that level 6, Belgian Beast has the ability to lock somebody down. Along with that teleport, you have to think that if Copenhagen Wolves maintain this focus on the top lane tower, that they may consider ganking Reckless and Unlimited. We do see that the second red buff of the game is, or the red buff steal of the game rather, has been taken away, and that's the second red buff that Naruto has actually been denied in this matchup.
And we did see a counter invade here from Naruto, but he was seen by that ward down in the middle by the river, and he's going to get collapsed on here by Coutard.
Oh, we do see Coutard does manage to come in and knock up, lands on Naruto. He actually flashes over the wall, now turns the focus back, does not have enough rage stacks to be able to throw down that Dragon's Descent. Coutard flashes forward, Rift walks in for the damage. We do see Naruto turn back onto Coutard as now Belgian Beast is trying to even one up. Second kill of the game lands for Copenhagen Wolves as the Belgian Beast gets locked in with a Cataclysm. Shook2 says thank you very much, secures his buffs back, and gets a third kill for the Wolves.
Great answer there from Copenhagen Wolves. They collapsed. Meanwhile, the bottom lane of TCM wasn't really on the same page of this invade. Talked about invades and counter jungling being a team sport here. Jarvan uses his gap closer to get the early knockup onto Shyvana, so he's not able to follow her over that wall. Probably should have expected that Shyvana was going to go that way, and this kind of caused the overextension by Coutard where he had to flash and rift walk forward and ends up dying. But they did, regardless of that, come out with the 2-for-1 trade.
So at the end of the day, advantage still sits in the hands of the Copenhagen Wolves. They have got a significant farm lead in their top lane as well as in their AD carry. You can see that Reckless is just he's doing better in that 2v1 thanks to the fact that, well, basically his opponent hasn't got first blood.
He hasn't had to worry about the ganks from Shyvana, whereas the bottom lane for TCM has had to worry about the ganks from Jarvan and has actually died to the ganks of Jarvan. So this CS lead for Reckless was brought about because of the discrepancy of early jungle presence. This is one case where you actually are allowed to blade the jungler.
We'll have to see whether or not Naruto can bring it back and make a bit more of an impact in this mid game. Now that the first tower has fallen, you can see that Reckless has backed off. He's picked himself up that Cutlass, an attack speed dagger, and on his Vayne, he's actually maxing his Silver Bolts first. That is the W. And I guess when you're facing a Vayne and a Shyvana who are naturally pretty beefy in the hit point total, I can see that making a lot of sense.
Nasa's definitely going to be a large HP champion as well as Shyvana, so he's going to be able to melt whatever target he isn't right in front of him. As Vayne, you don't want to be diving to the back line, especially if you're against something like a Lissandra, Zyra, Varus combo. You just want to be able to melt the tanks that are in front of you and tumble backwards. So he's really adapting to the opponents that are in front of him. Not only maxing Silverbirds, but also going to rush that Blade of the Ruined King.
And Copenhagen Wolves just with great timing and map awareness, really. Realizing JWoww was up top, he's got no teleport to get involved in a dragon, anything. And the 5 members of the Copenhagen Wolves just walk into the pit, secure the first dragon of the game, and there's absolutely no reply here from TCM. They had a little bit of vision, but they really didn't know exactly when it started, and then they couldn't actually see in the pit as it was going on.
Right, and they are behind right now, but it seems like the juicy siphoning strike stacks were just too much for JWoww to ignore. And he's actually, even with that free time up there that he got in exchange for the dragon, he's only got 63 extra damage on his siphoning strike, so it's not hitting substantially harder.
Well, he is 30 CS behind his opponent Youngbuck, who's doing very well. Naruto hanging out in the bush, but Shook2 is probably very aware of that. You can see he's hanging out in the mid lane with his Cataclysm and his flash available.
So this is a good counter gank opportunity for Copenhagen Wolves, because a Shyvana ganking a Kassadin is normally a futile attempt here. They actually just go to call him out there, but I don't know, Coutard lost quite a lot of health for not a lot of time gained there.
Yeah, it looked like Shook wasn't entirely committed to that. He could have jumped over the wall and knocked up Shyvana, but I think they were a little more afraid of Lissandra.
Yeah, they could have actually just wasted a bit more of Shyvana's time, as long as Coutard was ready with his Rift Walk to get away from that Lissandra and not get locked down. Like we said before, this Shyvana brings absolutely no control to the fight, especially against a Cassidy, where she can't even get the knockback on her ulti.
Teleport's coming down the bottom lane. Matroco is the focus. Kaltod comes in, but the Force Pulse actually misses. He doesn't manage to get the slowdown. They've traded 1-for-1. Both AD carries are dead. Now it's down to the mid lane as this Barney D just gets dropped down. We see Kaltod in the back line. His Rift Hook is available. He jumps in for some damages. Shook 2 now joins the party. Cataclysm is available. He knocks
everybody's here.
Nobody up. The Claw of Doom comes out, and we do see a Rift Hook away from Kaltod. Naruto adores with his flame breath, and those double Doran's rings just pick up a kill onto Unlimited. They end up trading 1-for-2, advantage TCM.
Mid laners with teleport, sad day for the AD carries here as both of them go down, and then the junglers arriving meant that TCM actually had the upper hand and able to get 2 kills out of that. Meanwhile, since Nasus has been behind and is not shoving that lane, just trying to get siphoning strike stacks, Young Buck has rotated to the mid lane and getting a lot of damage onto this turret.
He's dropped it down to below half right now. He's got a 50 CS advantage, and he's put actually a lot of damage there onto Naruto just with that brief stun and some auto attacks. And Young Buck is just working himself towards that Sunfire Cape. Copenhagen Wolves with a 3,000 gold advantage. And even though they've got the top tower down, they seem to be happy to just stall this game out and give Reckless more time to farm. He's decided to go for triple attack speed dangers as opposed to finish that Blade. I imagine he wants Blade and Zeal at the same time.
That's one of the things, the drawbacks of the Blade of the Ruined King rush is that you have a lull in your power before you're able to make the combine cost and turn the Cutlass into the full Blade of the Ruined King. So a small stopgap for that is the extra dagger that he can turn into any of the attack speed items that Vayne will want to build after this. They vary in popularity depending on region. Some people prefer the static shiv like North America, whereas a lot of Korea love the Phantom Dancer as well as Europe. And there we go, the Flash Initiate.
Flash Cataclysm, Matroco and Barney D are locked inside. The Condemned slams Matroco into the wall, and 2 immediate kills for Copenhagen Wolves. They extend their gold lead. Naruto Adore and Belgian Beast are trying to reply with a tower. It's taking them a little bit of time. They will get their first tower of the game.
They're able to answer with the turret. And look at the top lane. We've had Nasus freeze that lane up top by his turret this entire time. They are willing to trade control of the map for siphoning strike stacks right now, but it's actually costing them deaths as well as turrets.
Yeah, and the thing that you really have to give props to Copenhagen Wolves about, they've stolen a red buff away. They took the first red, they took the respawn of the red, and they've just taken the previous blue buff as well. So of the 4 odd buffs that spawned for Naruto,
Kaltod gonna get this one.
Kaltod just finishes him off. Naruto, he's not had his buffs. He's not, he is sitting, a level higher than Shook 2, but unfortunately, there's not much impact from the Shyvana at all.
Yeah, he was trying to answer the blue buff steal right there and go take Copenhagen Wolves, but really, he just set it up for Kaltard to be the one on the receiving end of that blue buff. So he's gonna be able to regen and stack up that tier much quicker. At this point, Kaltard has 3 kills without building any ability power. He only has his ramping up items, and they're just at the mana phase. Once he gets those blasting wands to turn that into a Seraph's Embrace and a Rod of Ages, then he's going to hit a huge power spike. Or first the Archangel Staff, and eventually into the Seraph's Embrace.
So you're trying to imply that he hasn't had a huge impact already, but he's doing so much work right now.
All that work's being done without ability power. That's all I'm saying.
It's a good place to be. If you are the Copenhagen Wolves, it is a very good place to be. Even Reckless has been basically uninterrupted in his farming right now, approaching 16.5 minutes. He's picked up 140 CS. Blade of the Ruined King completed. He's got that attack speed dagger. And we tend to see more of the Phantom Dancers on this side of the pond, but we'll see if Reckless is still sticking to the traditional build. And the Wolves, with the Dragon respawning, they've got a 5-man stack, they've got vision control, and they're going to be saying, well, if you want to fight TCM, bring it. We're happy to.
TCM look like they do want to fight. They've actually called down the Nasus from that top lane.
Naruto Adore manages to avoid the death sentence, doesn't catch him and hold him in place, and a couple of little roots thrown out from Barney D hold Copenhagen Wolves in place, and you can see thanks to that bit of focus and damage, it allows Copenhagen Wolves to secure the second dragon of the game with relatively no cost. It cost him a little bit of HP.
That was a huge win for Copenhagen Wolves right there. They were able to pull the Nasus away from his Siphoning Strike farming, and TCM didn't even make a move after that because they didn't have the proper vision of Dragon area, and they don't want to rush into that from the small lane that comes through the jungle here. They're already behind and they can't fight out in the open. They need to use the turret to their advantage.
TCM are trying to buy time for Nasus to get to a power position, and I'm afraid they're waiting too long. They haven't made plays on objectives, and they're just falling further and further behind.
Even if they do get the Siphoning Strike stacks up, it's going to be hard for him to land those onto Vayne. She's extremely mobile, and Reckless will not make those positional mistakes to be in range of that Nasus. He does have Ghost and Flash, so he's got the utility summoner spells, and he'll be looking to get around easily, but there is some good peeling here on Copenhagen Wolves, and if they play it right, that Nasus should not be able to touch Vayne.
And now we even see Matroko down in this bottom lane. He's freezing the bottom lane up. TCM realize they've lost 2 of their 3 outer towers. Their top and bottom lane is falling further and further behind their opposite numbers. And you can just see the game plan from TCM right now. It's patience, and it's let's try get to the late game, and then we'll try to contest, and then we'll try to win.
They've already bled so much map control that it would be detrimental to switch their playstyle now. They've already decided that, yes, we're going to give up objectives in order to have solos farm. First it was Nasus, and now it is the Varus. Just slowly pushing these lanes to only last hitting, not trying to get any money pushed back in the favor of Copenhagen Wolves.
So I do want to highlight the fact that Naruto is still farming particularly well. 123 creeps secured, and it's about 50 more than his opponent, 40 more than his opponent. But that is, of course, at the detriment of his solo laners who are, a little further behind. Youngbuck wants out from a couple members of TCM, but they may decide to turn this one around. Lantern is going to pull Reckless in, decides not to take a ride on the Dark Passage, and TCM get away unscathed.
And it's a good thing that they backed off there because we didn't have a collapse from Varus. He stayed and continued to just try and last hit over in that bottom lane.
Once again, Copenhagen Wolves trying to find a window of opportunity. They managed to take away that blue buff again as it just respawned a moment or two ago from TCM. And Richard Rador's got a lot of farm, a lot of minions, but those are not big jungle camps. Daywild's looking to put some damage down into Kaltard and actually traded pretty evenly with that Siphoning Strike.
And Nasus will eventually become a split-pushing beast as soon as he farms up a little bit more, but it's going to take a few more minutes for him to get to that level. He only has the Iceborne Gauntlet right now, and that is not enough to deal with the Renekton.
And as you see Jaywild continually throwing down those withers onto Kaltard, and if Kaltard remains in melee range, he will eat a Siphoning Strike shot to the face. But to be fair, Jaywild took one of those Force Pulses and Null Spheres, and that also dropped him particularly low. He doesn't have any form of itemized magic resistance right now, and against Kassadin, he's probably going to need to work himself towards maybe that Spirit Visage in the not too distant future.
It'll be interesting which champion Copenhagen Wolves decide to send against the split-pushing Nasus with Ghost and Flash in the end game. Who will be able to handle him? I feel like my money is going to be on Reckless, even though he doesn't have Cleanse. When he eventually gets a Quicksilver Sash, he should be able to take down even an extremely farmed Nasus.
Well, we'll have to see because we are fast approaching that point in the game. 2 towers in favor of Copenhagen Wolves, 1 in favor of TCM-Gaming. And now 2 members of the Wolves are going to start getting some auto attacks on this mid tower. However, there's a very large contingent of TCM members trying to cut their morph. It looks like the Copenhagen Wolves are playing fantastic bait. There are some fishermen in that team because they pull TCM hook, line, and sinker.
Well, it's again, TCM giving up control of the map. This time it's their inside jungle for minion wave farm. They decided to leave Varus down bottom, allow him to get the free farm, and now Vayne's going for that kill on Nasus.
Nasus, he's got the red buff up. We do see the Fury of the Sands going down. Silver Bolts will be able to close it up. And I do see a reply tower from Matroko. He's been left unattended in this bottom lane. And Naruto, for the first time in a very long time, may be able to pick up a buff uncontested. However, 4 members of Copenhagen Wolves, 5 members rather, going to secure the inner turret in the top lane. As actually, Kaltard is going to force to defend this tower.
Ooh, he does get hit by the Varus ulti.
He does manage to Rift walk away immediately afterwards, and got a question. There wasn't exactly burst damage to break him down. Youngbuck is dived onto Barney D, trying to pick up a kill on the purple dinosaur as now Unlimited gets locked up. He was caught out of position. The box did not even go down, nor was his flash or ignite burned. A little too aggressive for the Copenhagen Wolves. Kaltod does have his flash up. He's doing the best he can to defend against this double auto-attacking combo Shyvana and Varus while the fight in the top lane is happening. It's almost a base race without anybody focusing the towers.
Copenhagen Wolves were getting a bit antsy there because of the pressure bottom afforded by the split push of Varus and Shyvana. They rushed a little bit too far and made a poor choice with that tower dive. Ended up costing them the Thresh life.
Nobody seemed to be on the same page when that happened. Youngbuck went in solo. There was a very good Stranglethorns from Barney D, which you do have to give credit to for interrupting it at the very least, but TCM, they hold their inhibitor turret. That is what counts. And now that all of the Copenhagen Wolves have backed off, Dragon has respawned, and they will once again be moving into the pit. They want the Dragon.
It is very hard for this Copenhagen Wolves team to pull off a tower dive. All of that crowd control that could be used for engage on TCM is just as strong at locking people down under those turrets. And we just saw them make great use of it there. But again, without control of the map, they're going to continue to bleed these objectives.
So as we look at the gold count, sticking to that 4,000 or 5,000 gold value, Copenhagen Wolves' advantage is slowly dwindling. It is slowly becoming less significant, especially when you look at now JWoww's Nasus, who is still sitting at 153 minions, and his Siphoning Strike is really starting to build up. It's going to hit pretty hard.
It's up to 297 now.
Bonus.
Yes, bonus damage. So that's almost 300 bonus damage on every Q, which is every 3.4 seconds.
That is pretty intense. He doesn't really have a lot of innate cooldown reduction just yet. And if he does decide to go for that Spur Visage, he's finally recalling. We'll see what he's going to spend a lot of this money on. You know, we've seen Nasus with those Siphoning Strikes hitting at about 2 seconds. Not only do they melt your faces if you're a champion, they shred towers as well, which you've always got to remember.
That's if Copenhagen Wolves can't keep him locked down. Without the flash, Cataclysm is one of the best tools with dealing with an end game Nasus. If you just use the Cataclysm on him and then flag and drag out with the Q and E combo, then that's a perfect counter to a Nasus without flash. It doesn't matter how farmed he is. If he's not getting off those constant siphoning strikes, then it's a whole bunch of money that you've wasted funneling it to that top laner.
So the key is going to be on Copenhagen Wolves forcing a skirmish to get the flash, and then following that up later with a team fight to pick up the kills. We'll see if they can pull that one off.
And we just saw 5 minutes ago how effective Reckless build is against even an extremely farmed Nasus. With maxing the Silver Bolts and rushing the Blade of the Ruin King and going full attack speed, he takes down even very large, high health targets very quickly.
Well, we do see now that Kaltod is trying to pick a fight with JWoww. Every single member of the Wolves is coming in. They're on the hunt. JWoww gets knocked up. He goes to this one. He's decided to turn around, gets pulled back by the Lantern. Every single member of the Wolves is here, bar for Reckless, and that's 4 members going to drop him down. You gotta be honest though, JWoww survived 5 or 6 seconds. He didn't exactly get bursted down.
Didn't get bursted down, but it doesn't matter. That's a huge threat gone from TCM. They've put so much time into that Nasus, into getting him farmed. Without him, they're at a giant disadvantage.
Naruto Door's gonna use that Dragon's Descent to jump over the wall, saving his flash, but it means his ultimate is not available for a potential Baron steal. The Copenhagen Wolves hop over the wall, and 4 members are starting on the Baron Nashor, while Kaltod is looking to run interference. He does manage to rift walk after the Grasping Root holds him. Baron is dropping low, but TCM want to contest. Knockout comes down. Belgium Beast forced to ulti himself. Frozen Tomb secures his life for a couple of seconds longer. The Hourglass is not completed yet. Claw of Doom gets him out cleanly, and TCM have yet to give up a kill.
That was a great disengage from TCM right there. Reckless was not able to join the fight. He was still down in the Baron pit, so they didn't lose anyone, and they delayed the Baron so long that 2 members of Copenhagen Wolves are extremely low now.
Now this is very, very risky for the Copenhagen Wolves. Their HP bars are dropping further and further away, and they are backing out safely. Teleport was actually used from Belgian Beast, and that was a little bit sloppy because that's now the cooldown, half of it blown.
Well, if Copenhagen Wolves hadn't backed off of that, then they definitely would have paid the price right there. TCM did such a great job of delaying that Baron and making Copenhagen Wolves tank it for so long that they had to pull a retreat.
So as it stands, take a look down at the scoreboard at the bottom of your screen. You can see those CS numbers basically even out. JWoww still 20 CS behind, has been for the majority of this game. We actually see that Matroko, thanks to all the alone time in the lane, has closed that gap on Reckless. Gold values, with the exception of the top laners, are relatively even across the board. There's 1,500 gold difference thanks to all of those dragons, because TCM have not got their hands on a single dragon yet.
And Copenhagen Wolves are going to be continuing to look for picks on the split pushers of TCM. It's kind of the rock, paper, scissors of strategies. Split pushers do lose to pick compositions that favor a high duelist that will go and pick off and kill your split pusher. But then AoE, oh, there we have the pick right now.
Youngbuck manages to get the stun down in Matroko. In the background, Naruto tries to pick a fight. Now all the utility TCM need has not landed. Stranglethorns is available as a Chain of Corruption missed. We do see Belgian Beast forced to save his life for a couple seconds. That was a 5-man knockup in favor of TCM-Gaming. Youngbuck is trying to run interference as Kautard manages to deal enough damage to allow Youngbuck's AoE to secure the kill. They've traded 1 for 1, but instantly 2 more champions die. This is a 2-for-2 trade, but it's the mid laner, an AD carry that is down to TCM. Reckless dives in there with the help of Kautard to secure the 3rd kill of the fight, and a double kill for Kautard. Reckless was untouched in that fight.
Yeah, you got too close to Reckless in that one, but it was a good example of that stacking crowd control that we talked about. The Lissandra into the Zyra ultimates was able to set him up for a very, very nice Stranglethorns right there, which allowed TCM to even come out that well in the fight.
There's a replay of that engagement, so talk us through the specifics.
So, we was forced to use a defensive Lissandra ult, but that baited the entire Copenhagen Wolves into that 4-man knockup from the Stranglethorns of Zyra, and now Youngbuck actually stays alive for a lot longer than he should, as Varus is still trying to finish out Kautard, and they actually are ending up able to take him out. But now, Zyra stepped a little too close, and we look at a NASA splash burned. That means he's susceptible to the old cage of Jarvan there, and he can get locked down inside a Cataclysm.
Ding, ding, ding. The window of opportunity is now available for Copenhagen Wolves to try and force maybe even tower dives. You know, we've seen it on the inhibitor turret. We've seen they're not afraid to go, you know, as deep as possible. And without JWoww being able to get to the back line and get to Reckless, that's got to be an inviting fight if you're a Wolf.
And even if JWoww does, Reckless now has the Quicksilver Sash. So he's got that 3rd item along with his attack speed build that's been rounded out. He does not have much to worry about anymore. As long as he's able to avoid the knockup from the Zyra ulti, he'll be okay.
Well, we'll have to see how TCM managed to handle these next few fights, because in the previous engagement, JWoww was almost able to hit Reckless's vein. It didn't work out for them. Now, Copenhagen Wolves, they did try Baron a couple of minutes ago. They were thwarted, they were forced away from it, and you can see that they're setting up a lot of vision in the jungle of TCM. And you know, I'm sure somebody's keeping tabs. I think TCM have only gotten 2 of all of their blue and red buffs this entire game, because Copenhagen Wolves have stolen away and secured every single one that spawned after those first couple.
They did trade a few red buffs also, so they've gotten some of the opponent red buffs, but they definitely have come out on the losing end of the buff count overall here. Meanwhile, I mean, oh, here we go. Reckless does get another catch.
The Condemned manages to lock up Naruto for a couple of seconds. He's forced to use that Dragon's Descent defensively, jumping away from the fights. Even in a best case scenario, TCM were in a 4-man engagement, but they did manage to get out 2 ultimates there. So Copenhagen Wolves, very happy. No flash, no Chain of Corruption, no Dragon's Descent for a little while.
They did have a split pushing Nasus for that amount of time, but Nasus now has no Ghost and no Flash, so he was not able to take the turret, had to back off and play a bit more defensively without his summoner spells.
Well, we do see the rest of TCM grouping up towards their own red buff. The Death Bush has been created. The Copenhagen Wolves waiting, but there was a little bit of vision there. Barney, you just seen them The seed plants have come up. We do see in the top lane though, the Door's been caught. Belgium Beast dives forward, forced to ulti himself, get the AoE slowdown. Now JWoww trying to get in range. Siphoning Strike is hitting so many people for Kaltod, able to rift walk to safety. Now JWoww does manage to get down onto Reckless. Barrier keeps Reckless alive. He almost two-shots him. Barney D trying to defend his life, manages to get one as Youngbuck will close out a kill on Metroko. After that barrier goes down, Kaltod just surviving, triple kill. But Reckless saving his life with that barrier.
He got a little too close to the dog and he got bit right there, but he was able to survive. Now he knows how much damage he can take from a siphoning strike at least.
Here's the replay of the match. So what's the key things?
So the death push does work out. They're able to take out one of the tanks immediately. It was a very good job by Lissandra to stay alive as long as she did with her invulnerabilities, but Reckless's damage on Nasus, able to take him out before he goes down to the siphoning strikes. And without the second tank, there's nothing left in the TCM midline, and their backline just crumbles.
So with that very convincing ace, Copenhagen Wolves secure the inhibitor turret as well as the inhibitor at 33 minutes. Now Naruto is trying to pick a fight. He's managed to get the shutdown kill onto Reckless. That's a massive chunk of change in his back pocket. Naruto pulled off to the side thanks to Unlimited's death sentence. Now Naruto split. He wants Thresh. The rest of TCM still thinking about Youngbuck, but this is going to be a difficult ask, especially with Kaltod now back in the mix.
Yeah, no crowd control on that Shyvana. She can't continue the chase. Gonna have to give this one up and be happy with that one kill on Reckless.
Now we see TCM. They're thinking about starting off this Baron 25 seconds before Reckless is up and alive. A number of ultimates are available for the Copenhagen Wolves.
Lissandra's very low, but she still has both of her invulnerabilities available.
Well, we'll have to see how it works out.
Oh, gets hooked though.
The Claw of Doom goes out. Chain of Corruption whiffs, catches absolutely nobody. Belgium B is able to pick up the first kill onto Unlimited. Youngbuck forced to get away. Dominus is up, slice and dices away. Kaltod rift walks away from the damage and piercing arrow. Not going to actually land, but they have delayed the Baron. Reckless is now alive, and he's begun his trek from the fountain to the Baron pit. There are super minions in the mid lane pushing up. There are a massive wave of minions in the top lane. They're about to take down this tower if they can get rid of the minions, and it does look like the blue side may be able to secure it. However, Belgian Beast will save the tower on 10 HP.
So they saved the tower, but no Baron. It was a bit of an overextension there by Unlimited. He saw how low Lissandra is, but a great job by Belgian Beast, recognizing that he can ultimate himself and still have the damage necessary to finish off that Thresh by himself. The invulnerability on yourself doesn't mean you aren't getting to use the damage. It just means you don't get the lockup on your opponent.
So in terms of the super minions now pouring through this mid lane, TCM have been very content to freeze lanes and to farm lanes up throughout the match. And I think they're not going to be too unhappy with a single inhibitor down. However, they cannot afford to lose a fight, the top tower, and the top inhibitor, because that top tower is incredibly low.
They definitely don't want to let a second inhibitor turret go down. It's very easy to push a side lane in with super minions to take out Nexus turrets, whereas it's fairly easy to defend against one. You're right, TCM's been on the defensive this entire game, and with the super minions constantly pushing that mid lane, they can actually continue to farm inside their base, and nothing has changed here. They've been giving up map control all game long, so they'll just continue to do that and bank on those siphoning strikes continuing to stack up, which, by the way, have reached 468 extra damage.
Well, we'll have to see if he can make it stick. He does have his flash available. Baron is going to be secured as that just gets shredded by the Copenhagen Wolves. If any crowd control lands, somebody may be in trouble, as Kaltod is the first to initiate. Now, there's no long-range arrow or long-range CC from Copenhagen Wolves. Barfor throwing themselves out. That's Kaltod with a flash forward. He picks up Bonnie D on the retreat, and just with his damage alone, that is a very scary Kaltod. With a 5v4 situation and no Stranglethorns, this should be a quick and easy tower.
Yeah, one shot, that's pretty easy. Reckless is able to take that one down, and this is going to be two inhibitors and a baroned up Copenhagen Wolves looking to end it.
We'll have to see if they go for the Nexus turret, potentially play it by the numbers. There's a very big minion wave on the bottom half of the map. That is now pushing down onto the bottom lane inner turret, and it looks like Copenhagen Wolves want to play this one by the numbers. Every tower, every inhibitor, and then the Nexus.
Not taking any chances here. especially with that extremely farmed up Nasus. But that was really a side effect of the max health damage Vayne that he's built. They can easily take down Baron in a matter of seconds.
Oh, Naruto-Dor's gone forward. The Chain of Corruption was out. It's locked up multiple members of Copenhagen Wolves, but Naruto-Dor is the first victim to fall. Cataclysm is going to hold Belgian Beast in place, while the Stranglethorns will disrupt the Copenhagen Wolves, but that's all it does. Doesn't allow them to do anything more. Barney D just gets melted by Coutard as he gets all of that damage down. Waiting for the minions to push into the lane, and then Copenhagen Wolves should be looking to secure the third inhibitor of the game, and the game, in fact, as there are only 2 members left to defend. This is going to be a tough ask for any team.
Now this is just game 1 here too, so we're gonna go into the second game, and TCM, we'll have to see if they decide, oh, they're gonna continue to fight here. Reckless is going in.
Well, a death sentence goes out a little bit early as Matrako's GA gets popped. He then gets popped after respawning. The Copenhagen Wolves are looking to close this one out. Spirit Fire comes down. JWoww flashes forward, manages to hit Reckless, but doesn't even go through the barrier thanks to all of the HP. And of course, his cleanse going out. And Nexus goes down. Copenhagen Wolves secure game 1 in this best of 3.
Congratulations, but you can tell that they're thinking to the next game already. Would they like to deny Reckless the Vayne, or would they want to deny Coutard the Kassadin this time? They already tried to take away that mid Zyra and weren't actually able to capitalize with it. So they're gonna have to change it up.
Yeah, you've got to question the decision making in-game as well. You know, fair enough, they fell behind early thanks to the first blood, and Nasus not really being able to farm up as well as they were hoping. But they gave up so much CS, so many objectives. Their blue buff and red buff control in particular was not good at all. You'd think they could ward up and maybe defend against invades as opposed to just saying, hey, we'll leave it, you can have it.
Now, freezing a lane like that, or slow pushing it, if you just, as some people call it, if you just last hit the minions, is a very risky strategy. Yes, you can get a lot of farm onto a single champion on your team, but you